Ever wonder what the hell is happening with your hormones? I'm Kate Nagai, certified women's hormone health practitioner and cycle syncing strategist, and this is What the Hormones, where we decode PMS, perimenopause, burnout, and the chaos of midlife with real talk and real strategies. Whether you're here for hormone insights, expert conversations, or just need to know you're not alone in this, know that you are in the right place. So let's cut through that confusion and jump into this week's episode. There was a stretch in my life where I didn't really know which version of me was going to show up on any given day. I didn't understand the 4 different phases and how each phase impacted me differently. This awareness of starting to notice that I felt different at different times and correlating it to the phases of the cycle really started when I was in deep infertility, when I was trying to heal my body and trying to understand my hormones. And then as I entered early motherhood with my first baby, and then again with my second baby, and again with my third baby, noticing these shifts in how I was feeling, knowing my energy dips, knowing why I just didn't feel my normal self became a lot more prominent in my monthly living, not even my day-to-day living, but my monthly living. And it really became very apparent as I entered this space of both postpartum and perimenopause at the same time with my last baby. And, for me, what pulled me out of the fog, what gave me clarity, what gave me an actual map when I had nothing was learning to track my cycle. Not learning to track it perfectly, not rigidly, just noticing, learning what my body was doing and when. That's it. That's the whole thing. That kind of changed my perspective on my cycle, helped me connect to my body, and really changed my life. So you can imagine how I feel right now watching cycle syncing get dragged through the mud online. Today, we are talking about how cycle syncing got a bad rap, where the criticism is actually fair and where it's missing the point entirely, and why I think this conversation matters so much right now. So here's what I'm noticing more and more. Cycle syncing has gone from "this changed my life" to "this is unproven nonsense." And it feels like it kind of happened almost overnight. I'm seeing the critiques come not just from random internet skeptics, but from health providers, from people working in the hormone and wellness industry, people with letters after their name, saying things like, there's no proof that cycle syncing your workout does anything. Just more importantly, get people moving. And look, I get the spirit of that. Movement matters more than perfection. I'm not here to argue with someone trying to get women to break the sedentary lifestyle that the working culture has kind of ingrained in us and get them back in their bodies, get them back moving for wellness, for health. But here's where it stings for me. When an extremist version of cycle syncing, which is the hyper-rigid, hyper-optimized, you can only do this specific thing on this specific day or you've ruined it kind of version, gets used to throw out an entire practice, including the parts that are actually starting to show up in research, that's where I get a little defensive. That's where I get really protective of the cycle syncing strategies. It reminds me a little of how diet culture criticism sometimes swings so hard in the other direction that it ends up making people afraid of nutrition altogether. Same shape of overcorrecting. We take something that got twisted into rigidity, and instead of fixing the rigidity, we throw the whole concept out. So today, let's actually look at what the criticism gets right, because some of what is being said, there is truth to it. So I want to start here. Rigidity it is a real problem. If cycle syncing becomes I'm only allowed to do heavy lifting on specific days or I failed, or that I'm not healthy if I don't eat these certain foods on these certain days, my hormones won't be balanced. Let's just be clear. That's not body wisdom. That's just diet culture wearing a hormone vocabulary. And some of the content circulating out there generally is oversimplified. People making confident, sweeping claims with zero nuance, zero acknowledgement that every woman's bodies, every woman's cycle, every woman's life circumstances aren't different. There's also a fair critique that some of the most viral claims, things like sync your decision making to your cycle, don't have strong evidence behind them yet. And that's true. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that every cycle syncing claim floating around on the internet is backed by solid data, because it isn't. But let's remember that women's bodies really haven't been studied and haven't been studied properly or in depth. So saying that there is no data, you're not wrong, but you're also not right in the sense that you can say the same thing about anything and everything. Women's bodies haven't been included in studies for, or we have data points for, anxiety medication or antidepressants. Like there's things that we claim all the time that have not been studied on women's bodies and have no data points. So using cycle syncing as your example of why it's unreliable because there is no science behind it, then we have to throw so many things out. And so that's just not a realistic claim. But here's the cool thing. There actually is some research that is starting to emerge. There is some clever research projects that are looking at women's bodies, not just as an overall, but are actually starting to research how things are different, whether the data points change if they're in your follicular versus if they're in your luteal versus if you're in your period. So a lot of what we know about women's bodies in research, it is changing as these studies begin to expand. And this is one reason why I love Dr. Sarah Hill's book, because this is exactly what she talks about in the period brain, is the current research that is starting to emerge. Like, for example, one of the studies that she cites in there is how women, we're seeing how muscle gain happens in a body. And so they had one group of women who did strength training exercises for 4 times in their follicular phase and then only 2 times in the luteal phase. And then they had another group that did the reverse. They did strength training 2 times in their follicular phase and 4 times in their luteal phase. And what they found is that the women who did more strength training in the follicular phase and more rest in the luteal actually had significant, like not a little bit, I mean, massive, significant muscle gain in their body. So this was a really great example that shows us that how our body responds to the different hormones does change everything. And so I think this is like the first exciting sign that we get to see of how when we start to take research and question it and get research to be able to study not just one phase, but to study the whole cycle and multiple different points within the cycle, we're going to start to see that yes, these things, these claims that have been made, there is some truth to them. And it may not be like this big sweeping, like life-changing data, but it will be enough to make the discernment that yes, when we do shift our behaviors, when we do shift our expectations, when we are more boundaried, or when we are aware, when there's an awareness in our body that we feel different at multiple different points in our cycle, and we change our behaviors or our lifestyle around that not only will we create more health and wellness, but we will create more confidence in the body. And I think that is the important piece for women. Right now, the way that we have been living life is that we've been doing the same thing all the time, each phase. And women are feeling disconnected. Women are feeling burnt out. Women are feeling exhausted. And what that's really telling us is that maybe we need to shift it up and create these mini experiences where we get to play around and explore different variations of how we could live our life within a cycle, within a month, and seeing if that shifts our energy, if that creates more self-compassion, more love for ourselves, more boundaries, more understanding of our own needs. As women, we are so used to being outside of our body, giving up the authority of our body, and then constantly giving to the outside world, that we don't take good care of ourselves. And this practice of cycle syncing, it's asking us to tune back in and ask ourselves, what is it that I need? And what is it that I need this week of my cycle? So I want to bring this back to me for a minute, because this is the part that no review article can capture. Cycle syncing at its core was never supposed to be a rule book. It was a listening practice. It was an embodiment practice. It taught me to ask, what does my body actually need today? Instead of forcing the same outputs every single day of the month, regardless of what was happening underneath the surface. That's what got me through my infertility. That's what helped me in early motherhood. That's what's helping me right now as I navigate perimenopause. Learning to stop treating my body like a machine and to start listening to what is shifting within me. So I think it's important to note here that if we take cycle syncing and we make it rigid, if we make it rule bound, that only increases our stress. Rigid cycle syncing adds stress. And I agree with that critique completely. But attunement, using your cycle as a tool to build routines and flex with your actual hormonal reality instead of fighting against it, it's not a fad. That's just paying attention to our body, which most of us have never been taught to do. So here's where I land on all of this. I don't need cycle syncing to be perfect or fully proven to know that it matters. But I also don't want to pretend that every claim about it is backed by airtight data, because that's not honest either. The goal was never rigidity. It was never follow this exact protocol or you'll. The goal was to give a tool so that you were learning how to feel into your body enough to build a life that has some flow, that ebbs, that changes in it, instead of pushing through every single day like your hormones don't exist. If the loudest critics and the loudest influencers are both speaking in absolutes, I'd rather sit in the actual, more interesting, more honest middle. There is real research, and there's more research needed. And there's lived experience that counts for something way more than any data. And we have that lived experience until the data can catch up. So here's what I want you to take away from this conversation. You don't have to choose between trusting your body and respecting the science. You can do both. You can hold a framework loosely enough that it serves you instead of stressing you out. And you can stay curious about what the research says, even when it's still catching up with what women have known about their bodies for a very long time. Cycle syncing was never about creating rules. Cycle syncing was about getting to know your body and then giving yourself permission to listen to what your body needs and then ask for what your body needs. Get the support, get the help, and know that you are 4 different versions of yourself, and each of them deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved. So I hope this episode has landed for you. I hope this provides a little bit of clarity, especially if you're like me and you get a little fiery when you see these posts on Instagram that are trying to discredit the practices of cycle syncing, because we don't need to discredit it. We just need to see it for what it is, which is a practice that is meant to be flexible, a practice that is asking us to slow down and to listen. And then also to use the discernment of when we see these critiques coming through, of what is the purpose of their critique? What are they trying to protect? Are they trying to protect an old way of medicine or healthcare that has never worked for the woman's body? Are they trying to protect their work and how they support clients? Because I always say that when people start to say something is bad or that this is the only way to do it, those are absolutes. And that's not giving you options. That's more fear-inducing. So I encourage you, just like how we're using cycle syncing to get to know our own body, allow yourself to question these absolute messages, these criticisms, and know that at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what any expert or what any influencer says. If you feel like it has shifted your body, if you feel like it impacted your body, then that is your medicine. We need to teach more women to tune in to their body, to listen to what their story is, what their reality is, and then to trust that. So I guess I'm just leaving you with this message today that yes, like everything in the world, cycle syncing too has been getting a bad rap, or it's been getting some criticism. But if it works for you, and if you like it, if you love it like I do, then keep up the practice, because it's what makes you feel whole. It's what brings you pleasure. It's what gives you stability. It's what gives you so much self-love and compassion. At least it does for me. So listen to that and know that that in itself is very valid. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss one. And hey, share it with your bestie who may also be wondering what the hell is going on with her hormones. Until next time, remember, you deserve to feel good in your body, and together, we will figure it out.